friends, this is FirearmPop, and this is chapter 3 of my my series on my war stories. We've covered a couple: joining the Navy, why I did, what the climate was at the time, and prepping to go to war. Okay, prepping before we left to go to the Navy. Now we'll talk a little bit about life on board ship and kind of the kinds of things that went on. Okay, I ended up as a cook, and while we were in Nam, I was a midnight baker. So it was a pretty good deal because right after dinner, after whoever cooked dinner cleaned up and we're done, the galley was mine. I worked alone. I went in and I would bake all night. I would bake all the bread the ship needed, all the desserts, pies, cakes, breakfast buns. I'd make them all, and I'd have all night to do that. My 12-hour shift. When in the combat zone, you work 12 on, 12 off. So I had till the breakfast crew came in to get all this done, which included serving what we called mid-rats, which is midnight rations. So when they change the watch at midnight, the guys coming off watch can come down and grab a snack to eat. Really, people can come before they go on watch and grab something to eat at midnight, and those coming off can grab something to eat. So it was mid-rats, midnight rations that we served. And usually that was a soup and sandwich type of thing, nothing big. Not for the whole crew, just for handfuls of guys that came for that. So anyway, so I was on what do you call it? I was the midnight baker, and I'll get into more stories of what it meant to be a baker. But I was sleeping during the day because I was off, and when they loaded ammo on board ship, it was an all hands task. Of course, we'd have a lifeline going over to another ship, okay, the tender, and we'd bring ammo aboard. They'd get dropped on our deck, and then there'd be a line of guys from the deck down to where we stored the ammo, down the bottom of the turret, and I'll get into explaining a little bit more of that later as well. But so there'd be a straight line, so it'd be a handoff. Now these projectiles were 50 pounds, 50 to 60 pounds, and the powder was 50 to 60 pounds. Okay, the 5-inch 54 shells, okay, about that big around, about that long, and one by one you'd have to pass them along. So it would be a human chain type event. So it was all hands on deck type of work party. And so I was sleeping, and of course they only did that during the day, during daylight hours. I would be sleeping. And this one time this happened to me. Chief came walking down the compartment just to make sure there was nobody hiding, I guess, and found me sleeping. And he goes, get your out of bed, get up there, get on the working party. And I said, but I worked all night. I'm the baker. And he goes, I don't care who you are. This is an all hands working party. Get up there and get to work. So had no choice. Threw some clothes on, went out there and joined the line, and doing that. When that was over, went back to bed. Well, I got to tell you about the chiefs. Chiefs had their own mess on board ship. It was a little galley. There was nobody to cook for them. They took their food from the main galley, which was us, and so to supply their little galley. So they ate with us, but then they had extras to eat when they were hungry. Okay, so and pick on. Or if they couldn't get to us during chow time, they can go and find something there. Well, anyway, I'll never forget, since I was on all night long, this chief came in one night and going, "Hey, Cookie, what do you got to eat?" And I said, "I ain't got a darn thing." And he just looked at me, and I said, "Sorry, sir." He was the chief. I said, "Sorry, I don't have anything to spare in here today." And when I was in the kitchen, in the galley, I was in command. That was my command, he had no right to even enter without my permission. So he just looked at me, and he remembered waking me up that night. He saw, I can see it in his eyes, and he turned around and he goes, "I understand," and he turned around and walked away. And make a long story short, the next time we had to load some more ammo, I'm laying in my bunk sleeping, and I'm laying there, and I can hear him coming down the steps. So I'm laying there with my eyes just cracked open a little bit, pretending to be sleeping, and I see him walk over, and he looked at me, and he goes, "One of those," and walks away and leaves me sleeping. Okay. And desired result. Within a few nights, of course, guess who comes knocking at the door? "Hey, Cookie, what do you got to eat?" I said, "What would you like, sir? I'll make it for you personally. We got steaks, we got this, I can make you a cheese sandwich, I can, whatever he wanted. Even the other prized possession on board, we had canned peanut butter. I had cans of peanut butter I could give him, and I loaded him up, and he was a happy camper. And guess who was never bothered again to go on all-hand working parties during the day. But there were two rates on board ship that had those, kind of got those privileges. Being a cook was one, and another good buddy of mine was in the laundry, and he would he'd get the same kind of favors because people would come to him before Liberty and say, "I need my uniform pressed," or they didn't want to sit down there with an iron down in the berthing area ironing their own uniforms. When he can whip it out on his, they had the big, professional steam presses. His job really was not to do the uniforms of the crew, only the officers, and wash, of course, all the crew's uniforms. We had these big bags. Everybody's clothes got dumped in the bags. They went up there, these big commercial washers, and they'd stuff them back in the bag. By the time you got them back, they were all just what do you call one wrinkled mess. And so it was good to have a buddy in the laundry. So I'd go to him with my uniform, and within 10 seconds he'd get it done for me. And of course, anytime he needed something to eat, he knew where to come. So you get those kind of hookups that are vital aboard ship, vital for survival. Okay. Let me talk a little bit more about in the kitchen. Now we're in Vietnam, just off the coast of Vietnam. It's like 100 degrees at night, at nighttime. Okay, when I'm working, I got the little portholes open, but there's no air conditioning on board ship, and it's hot. Okay, so I report to work in my shift, making the bread and stuff for the next day, and I noticed the mixer's broken, and I go, what am I going to do now? How do I make 90 loaves of bread with the broken mixer? So I go running to my first class petty officer and say, the menu, it was captain's massive not to make what was on the menu and have it ready on time. So I went running to him and said, what do I do? I mean, the mixer's broken. How do I make 90 loaves of bread? So, listen, son, this is what you do, okay? He says, you take one of these big pans we call gunboats. He says, you put it on the floor, put all the same ingredients in there as if you were putting it in the mixer, except you use less salt. He says, and then you just commence mixing it by hand. And I went, you got to be kidding me. I said, but why less salt? He goes, trust me, just do it that way and use less salt. I went, okay, that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do. So back up to the galley I went, got all the ingredients, threw them in the gunboat, got down on my knees on the floor, rolled up my sleeves, and dug in there and started mixing this bread. Well, it took me about 2 minutes to realize why we had to use less salt. Okay, and there I am mixing this, and there's the sweat just starting to pour down my arms into the dough, and I went, now I understand why there was less salt needed, because I'm going to add it all. And there I was, just adding the salt to that bread mixture. sweetest tasting bread they had there in a long time. Of course, nobody in the crew knew that the bread was handmade. Luckily, the next day we had got the part helicoptered in, and the mixer was fixed, or else we would have been in deep stuff. Okay. And as a matter of fact, there was another night when I go and open up a bag of flour to make my 90 loaves of bread, and I open the bag of flour and it's got all little mealy bugs in it. Now you don't even see that anymore today. You old folks, old timers out there will remember opening up flour and all of a sudden finding mealy bugs, little flour bugs in the flour. Today the flour is so processed and no bug in his right mind could live in it. Anyway, that's a whole nother video and another story for another day. So I open this bag up and I see all the little bugs in it, and I go, well, this is no good. So I go running to my first class again and go, hey, the bread's got all bugs in it. I need another bag of flour out of the storeroom to make the bread. And he says, let me see this. And he comes walking over and he opens up the bag and he sees all the little bugs crawling around. They're still alive in there. And so he walks up to the menu and he crosses off where it says white bread on the menu, and he writes in Raisin Bread. And he goes, make what's on the menu, use that. And sure enough, I sat there, I put them in the mixer, put in the ingredients for Raisin Bread, and made Raisin Bread. Tasted delicious. Of course, I didn't eat any, and when my buddies passed, like my buddy from the laundry, don't eat the Raisin Bread, okay? Just keep going. Don't eat the Raisin Bread. But that's my my Raisin Bread story from the Navy. So anytime I eat Raisin Bread now, I always question that little stigma that got left with me. There was another time in the galley, you know, you get stir crazy. Here's where I got my war injury. A buddy and I were horsing around, slapping, you know, one of those slap and tickle times where we just, you know, shadow boxing with each other. Is that the right term? And so we were doing that and fooling around, and there was a knife on the counter, and we both went and grabbed for it. He got it first. When he drew back, my hand was still going down for it, and sliced me, okay, right across. When I reached for that knife, he came up with it and sliced 2 fingers. Not off, obviously, but the 2 nice gashes. And I ended up going and getting stitches put in it. And I remember the doctor said, well, how did this happen? And I said, well, I was cutting bread, sir. And he said, are you righty? And I went, yes, sir. And he just, at that point, he knew that I didn't do it cutting bread. And that was going to be my story, and I stuck to it. Anyway, got stitches and out of the galley until my stitches healed. And one of the interesting stories then was, because I was on a custom, I got other duty, and that was up on the bridge as a lookout. Now, as a seaman, you should know how to be a lookout. And so we're cruising along, and I'd be up there with binoculars, just cruising. Of course, the way they taught us, you cruise the horizon and looking for anything abnormal. So we're cruising along. It was a gorgeous day. Another one of those images you can't forget. And the captain comes walking out of the wheelhouse, and he comes over to me and he goes, sailor, do you see anything out there? And I went, no, sir. You know, all clear. And I just keep looking. And he goes, let's look right down there. He goes, look right there. What do you see? And I turned around and looked, and sure enough, there was this big whale going, and I just cracked up because I was looking at the horizon. I was just looking for something to pop up on the horizon, just doing my visuals. And this thing was in the water and never saw it. And of course the ship's radar saw it, and we needed to divert to avoid hitting the whale. That would not have been good. Okay, let's see here. And anyway, and you know, just being out at sea was a great experience. Nights had cooled off a little bit. Some of us would be out on deck before I had to go in for my my duty, and and of course now we're going to get the cat in the picture. But night before going into a port, we'd look and we'd stand there on deck, a bunch of us going, I can hear the music, but I can't see the lights. And we just look into the darkness and we'd say, I can hear the music. And the music really was in our souls, in our hearts, longing to be on liberty. Okay? Okay. One of the other things, I'm going to back up quite a bit when I reported on board duty. I met this guy named Tex, and I'll show you Tex in a picture here. He's the tall dude. Tex was from Texas, big guy, and he just loved everything about the Navy. And we just going, yeah, this sucks. And he goes, this is the greatest thing that ever happened. And again, born and raised in Brooklyn, never been beyond Brooklyn, so I had no idea what it was to live in any other part of the country. And Tex said, oh, this is great. He goes, you got bathrooms with running water. He says, you got electricity. He says, this is great, 10 times better than I had at home. I says, are you kidding me? And he goes, hey, he says, where he lived, there was no running water. There was no bath facilities other than the outhouse, and he says there was no electricity. Okay? So, this is Firearm Pop. Be safe out there, and God bless. Bye now.